start spreading the news.
Good evening. You're listening to Z Travel and Leisure, Mondays at 8 p.m. on WVOX 1460. I'm Art Zuckerman, and I'm here with my co-host, Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
We have a great show tonight.
Yes, very good.
We have a very, very talented guy. His name is Alan Cohen. He's going to be a guest on our show. He's probably one of the best tour guides in New York City and extremely knowledgeable. And later on the show, we're going to have a best-selling author who has written about 10 books, best-selling books, and one of his books was pending a movie, was a movie with Whoopi Goldberg and
Neil Patrick
Harris. Right, he'll be on the show later on. But right now on the line, we have a very talented guy we happened to meet recently. We were so impressed by him, we said we must get this guy on our show. His name is Alan Cohen, and let's talk to him right now. Alan, are you there?
I am.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. Now, you have quite a background. We did a lot of homework on you, and we want to go through a couple of things that you have. Now, you're a licensed tour guide of New York City, right?
Correct.
Okay, you're part of this GANIC group, which is the Guides Association of New York City, which means you're a licensed guide. And what's your background? Very broad. And I have a lot of questions for you, boy. One of the things I know you did for a number of years where you worked with Central Park. 7 years. Wow. You must know everything about Central Park, huh?
I know enough to know that there are people who know more than I do. But I know what's come out there, so.
Okay. We had Sarah Cedar Miller on our show a couple of years ago. She's a fountain.
She knows more than I do.
No, probably. That's her profession, and she does everything like that. Here's my question for you, and I'm dying to ask you this thing. We have a favorite bird in Central Park. His name is Pale Male. Now, at last estimate, he was somewhere in the 20s, age 20 years old plus. Is he still alive?
As far as I know, yes. I mean, the amazing thing about him, which I can't understand, is that he's on his eighth wife.
Eighth wife?
Eighth wife, yes, God bless him.
Okay.
She's affectionately known as Octavia.
Octavia.
That makes sense, okay.
And necrologists have done studies of the dead bird tissue of the females that have either been hit by a car or seem to have died from natural causes, and a number of them ate poisoned rats.
Yeah,
right. We know
that's amazing to me.
That he never did.
That he never had.
Pale Male never did. So I'm assuming that he recruits his wives based upon whether or not they would be tasters for him.
Okay. So now, how long you did Central Park for 7 years? Do you have any favorite spots in Central Park that you do?
My personal favorite is Hearn's Head, although I love all of the park. I love the northern half more than the southern half. But in the southern half, I love the Hearn's Head, the juxtaposition of the rock formation and the sandy little beach, and then your position on the lake viewing the Ramble behind you, and you also get a good view of the New York skyline. I find it a very, very special spot.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay.
That's my favorite.
Our guest tonight is Alan Cohen. He is an absolutely fantastic guy. We were so impressed by hearing him that we said, whoa, we must get this guy on our show. And if you want to find out more about Alan's tours that he does, and he does quite a number of them, we'll talk about a number of them together, you can go to his website at www.takeawalknewyork, that's spelled out New York, takeawalknewyork.com, and you can find out all about his websites. Now, Alan, you have you have a collaboration between some other young women. Tell us about that.
The collaboration?
Yes.
Through Central Park, I met a number of wonderful guides, and one of them, her name is Lori Lewis. She is more experienced as a Central Park tour guide than I was, but we found that we were very simpatico in terms of giving tours and the way we viewed the park, and talked and decided that we would form Take a Walk New York together. So we offer one tour in common, which is Central Park, but otherwise we give our own tours. And so this is really more a website that we share together.
Okay.
We share marketing. We share a newsletter. The newsletter, or the website actually, was done by another Central Park tour guide, Deborah Harley, who works for a living rather than being a tour guide and enjoying herself.
Okay.
She actually works in an office. Poor Deborah. Occasionally she does give some tours for us. Anyway, Deborah designed the website. Lori and I share it, and I do some tours, like 400 Years of History in 1 mile in Lower Manhattan, also a public art tour in Lower Manhattan. Both Lori and I love parks, so I do a Fort Tryon tour, and what Lori does is green spaces on 42nd Street. She does a number on her own. If you go to the website, you'll see the tours that are listed, Lori doing a number of them, and I tend to do different ones.
Okay, sounds good. Now, your background is originally a psychologist. Is that what I'm
Correct.
hearing? And you also
Correct.
taught college. Where did you teach college?
I started actually doing adjunct work while I was still working full-time as a psychologist and as a professor, but that was at Dowling. From Dowling, I wound up going to Adelphi, where I started teaching just as an adjunct. Then went full-time to Adelphi. I was there about 9 years in different positions, from being an assistant professor to being an assistant dean. I was the chairperson of the Department of Special Education there. I left Adelphi and wound up going to Marymount Manhattan College, where I was the chairperson of their teacher education program, and I taught courses in psychology, a writing class, also a course on Central Park that I had created.
Right.
So Marymount was my last full-time gig as a professor.
Now, if people take a tour with you, what would they expect? Are there large groups? Is it 5 people? Is it 100 people? And what's typical of what you have?
They've been small groups. I should also mention that I do work for Untapped Cities. I do a subway tour for them, which is not one that I created, but learned. It was one of their tours, and those tours tend to be large. I also do a Central Park tour for them, and those tend to be, on the larger side, meaning, as much as 20 people. I don't use amplification on my tours, and if I had a headset system, I might consider that. Otherwise, I want to speak naturally to folks, and I like the more intimate size of a smaller group.
Right.
So I'm not using amplification. With Untapped, my tours tend to be a little bit larger. But otherwise, with Take a Walk, they've tended to be rather on the small side. They're intimate,
Right.
and I think it's an opportunity to really tailor a tour to the interests of the people that you're with.
Now, we met you at the Museum of the City of New York, and I must tell you, and you can probably elaborate on this, is that we were so impressed by what they did in this museum. We hadn't been there, Susan, how long? Probably over a year?
Over a year, yeah.
Over a year. I think the last gigantic meeting they had there.
Right.
And we came back, and I was just overwhelmed. What's for our listeners, what's the Museum of the City of New York like, and what would they expect if they go there?
The Museum of the City of New York has changed significantly over the years, and I should note I'm not an official spokesman. I'm a volunteer there, so
Okay.
I'm giving my perspective as a volunteer and also as a member of the museum and somebody who loves to go there, just for my own pleasure.
Right.
But the museum changed significantly a number of years ago, where the focus in the past tended to be more collections driven. It was showing off period furniture or an extensive toy collection or a series of dollhouses that they had. And that was a fairly traditional way of going about having a museum. What's changed is that it's much more narrative driven now. It's an attempt to tell stories. So what we have now, which is the result of a multi-year, about $100 million renovation to the building itself, but also a tremendous investment in the galleries and the technology. Our whole first floor is devoted to New York City history, and I think that's what you toured with me.
We thought that was
called
fantastic.
New York at its core.
It's great.
One gallery is devoted to the period of time from 1609 to 1898, when New York becomes Greater New York. The other gallery is devoted to 1898 to 2012. And the third gallery is Future City, and it's presenting current data, but also providing an opportunity for anyone to create their vision of what the city might be like, and using technology. So there are tables that are set up where you can create your future block that would be attractive, affordable, resilient in terms of global warming, or you could create a park, and there's a very large wall where your creation can get displayed. Kids love this. You can stand on some circles that I don't know how they do it. I feel like they're going to do Beam Me Up, Scotty.
Okay.
But instead of being beamed to some other place,
Right.
Your image, a digitized image, gets displayed on the wall of your creation. So you see yourself on your model block or your model park.
Oh, that's great.
And there are many artifacts. There's wall text throughout that whole first floor to describe what's there. That's a permanent exhibition. On our second floor, we have Activist New York, which is also an ongoing exhibition dealing with 14 different examples of how New Yorkers have attempted to affect change, whether it's advancing the cause of civil rights or working against it or working for or against a particular thing. So it's not always change in a particular direction, but 14 different ways, from religious freedom to abolition to outlawing liquor to civil rights issues to the Black Lives Matter movement. So there are a number of different cases that are there. And we also have temporary exhibits that are time limited. One just opened up, Germ City. It's about the interaction of people and microbes. It deals with migration and how cities are places where germs accumulate and wind up being spread, but it's also a place where you tend to have medical advances to fight them. So it's a two-gallery brand new show in coordination with two other cities, with both Hong Kong and Geneva, and also the New York Medical Academy, to have art and interactive exhibits about microbes in the city. We have photography of Stanley Kubrick. There's in the hallway, there's an exhibition about rebel women who have, during the Victorian age, decided to defy expectations that were placed on them. And also
our favorite film about New York City.
that Timescapes, which is wonderful,
It's
narrated.
fabulous. It's the best.
By Stanley Tucci. It's about a half an hour film, and it really is well done.
Alan, that tour, by the way, that film is probably the best film we have ever seen on New York City. Susan, while Alan's, why don't you tell us about Alan, how people can reach him? As you guys can hear, our listeners, Alan his knowledge is terrific. He's an excellent speaker. I think you guys will enjoy his knowledge of the city, and don't miss it. We were mesmerized by his job. We sat there and said, "Whoa, this guy is good. Susan, how do we reach Alan?
Yeah, Alan, do you also do customized tours? I know you have tours listed on the website, but
we have regularly scheduled tours, but also private tours, which would be one of our regular tours, but scheduled whenever the customer would want them, assuming we're available. And also, if people move at a slower pace or have any kind of physical issues, or the ability to access stairs, we can usually modify those tours to accommodate folks. So that would be a private tour.
Okay.
And then custom tours would be where you contact us and you make a request of something that we're not currently offering on our website.
Okay.
And assuming it's within our area of expertise, it could be a tour. I stopped giving. I had been offering a tour of Brooklyn Heights, but if you're interested in parts of Brooklyn where I'm a native, I'd be happy to take you there. I just would want to have some time to refresh my memory, to plan a route and do that kind of thing.
Right.
So that would be one that would be custom made just for what was requested.
Okay, so Alan's website, if you want to look at basically like the public tours, it's called takeawalknewyork.com. And if you want to contact Alan about any of the tours,
Well, should we give him, Alan, you have a number we can give people?
Private tour.
Well, on the website, there is a contact form. So there's a contact button, and they can, put in a request either to get our free newsletter, We have a monthly newsletter. I've written several of them. Lori's written more than I have. We've also started a blog post, and that's free, so people can just go to that website, read the newsletter, sign up for it. But using that contact form, you either sign up to get an email newsletter delivered to you, or they can ask to take one of our tours or be in touch with us. That's probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
Alan, you've been doing this how long now? How long a period of time?
Take a Walk New York is 3 years, and again, Central Park another 7 years before that.
So about 10 years, and you were doing that. Now the people? I guess Central Park last year had estimated over 30 million people visitors to Central Park. Is that
over 40 million.
Over
people
40
visit.
million. Wow. Well, anything that surprise when you take these people out, we always find it very interesting when people come in from outside of New York. They're always surprised about certain things in New York City. What have you found that people are surprised about?
How nice the people are.
Yeah,
We find that too. People are very surprised
and
about
clean
New
and
Yorkers.
clean.
I think one of the greatest pleasures about being a tour guide is that you interact with visitors who are here for pleasure, and 99.9% of the time they're just so happy to be interacting with a local and to see things. So dealing with the public is wonderful. But I think the other thing that visitors find is that New Yorkers are generally very warm and gracious. Somehow I think we have this reputation of being cold or distant, but my experience is that, if you're a visitor or even if you're a local and you stop at a corner and you sort of look puzzled around for 2 minutes, people are going to rush up to you and say, "Where do you need to go, fella? Let me help you."
Right.
Exactly.
That's great.
Exactly.
I think that's a very common experience. If you're standing puzzled in front of a pizza place, you need pizza recommendations. We love to share our knowledge.
right.
We love to interact with people.
Well, we had a very interesting story. We had a couple of years ago. We had two guys on our radio show. One guy was they both had websites. They were both in the West. One wrote a book about Balto, the sled dog that saved Nome, Alaska, and the other one was a dog. He was a kind of a I guess he was a little controversial with Balto. He wrote a book about Togo. Togo was actually the dog who actually did more of the Iditarod and that whole relay race that they had to bring diphtheria serum to New York City. And we had them on the show 2 weeks in a row. They don't like each other, by the way. One gives Balto all the credit, and one gives Togo all the credit. The one thing that we found out is Central Park writes a book about statues. And I'm going to ask you what your favorite one is in New York City. The rubber statue and the statue of Balto, the one in the city there. And they wrote in the Central Park book that sadly Balto died of the rigors of the race. And I thought that was amusing because I had pictures of Gunnar Kisson. That was the musher who was Balto's musher, and he was at Balto's statue unveiling 11 months after the race. So he could not have died from the rigors of the race.
Exactly.
He actually died about seven.
Balto was at the unveiling of his statue.
He was at the unveiling of the statue.
And he lived about another 7 years.
He lived 7 years in the Cleveland Zoo. The kids raised funds to do all this thing. And we found it interesting that they made a mistake on this thing, but that's Balto. So with that in question, your favorite and most unknown monument in Central Park?
Unknown monument? Mm-hmm. There's a stone face that is not on any of the lists. And by the way, a little plug here. It's purely something for fun for people to do, working with some other Central Park tour guides and also a staff member. I was part of creating a website called centralparkinbronze.com. So all lowercase, one word, where we have photos and descriptions of all of the statues in Central Park.
Okay.
The one that you won't find there because it's unofficial, it's hidden, is somebody did, I can only refer to it as graffiti art. They cut a face, a human face, in a stone that's on the stairs to the northeast of the blockhouse in the northern part of Central Park.
Okay. We know that one.
And so when you go up there, depending upon which path you take to go towards 110th Street, you come across this very interesting face, totally unauthorized, just staring at you, and it's absolutely lovely. It has a rather primitive, interesting feel to it. So I happen to love that one.
Yeah, our favorite spot in Central Park is Conservatory Gardens. And we always talk about the Untermeyer statue. And you know the story about the Untermeyer statue that was put together by Samuel Untermeyer. Mm-hmm. And, he was involved with he was involved with a legal case against Woodrow Wilson. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
No.
Woodrow Wilson was being, what's the best word? He was being extorted for money. Blackmailed. And Untermeyer represented this woman, and they found out that Wilson had an affair with her many years before. And Untermeyer decided to represent this woman, and make a long story short, the woman wanted $30,000 to keep quiet. And Wilson wanted to pay her, but he didn't have the money, because that $30,000 when Wilson was president was a lot. And it wound up happening that Untermeyer was a very wealthy lawyer who happened to be Jewish, said, I'll pay the woman the money, and I'll have her sign a paper not to ever mention this thing again, and I'll take care of the lawsuit, Mr. Wilson, but you're going to owe me a favor. Anyway, a year later, Wilson, the lawyer, Untermeyer, came to Wilson and said, I think it would be very good to have a Jewish Supreme Court justice, and Louis Brandeis would be perfect for you. All documented.
I didn't know that story. Wonderful.
All documented. And when we talk about, we like to delve into these deep little unknown facts about Central Park. We love Central Park. My dogs love it also. We have 2 golden retrievers, and they have a great time there. So that's terrific. Our guest tonight, and to let everyone know, is actually, if you guys can hear, he's a terrific tour guide. His name is Alan Cohen, and you can reach him at his website at www.takeawalknewyork.com. And Alan, you're terrific. I mean, we're really very impressed by you, and we know a lot of the GANIC members, and boy, you are head and shoulders there, and terrific. And we were very impressed by your presentation at the Museum of the City of New York, which we think is absolutely fabulous for people to go to. So you could take people in there if you wanted to, you yourself, right? I know you have to be very cautious about not overextending yourself to tours of the museum itself, but on a small basis, you can probably take care of people there.
There are free public tours every day of the week. I believe there are 2 on Saturday. I'm normally there on Wednesdays, and I occasionally sub for other docents during the week. So most of the time the tours are at 2, but there's a slightly different schedule on the weekend. And so in those tours, usually highlight tours, a docent will take people around either on the first floor, the core exhibition, or to some of the galleries on the second and third floor. Tour guides can bring customers to the museum where they're encouraged to do so, but the idea is not to actually give them a tour inside the gallery. Better to explain to them the way the gallery is organized, perhaps how to use it, what some of the technology might be, and then to encourage people to explore on their own and to meet them, meet their tour leader in the cafe on the second floor or someplace, after a half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever. So that would be, for tour guides. And if tour guides are interested, tour guide admission is free.
That's terrific. I understand that if you come in there as a guest, it's a donation, and it's at your.
It's a suggested donation. Just like a number of other city museums, there's a posted suggested amount, and knowing that you have not only staff, but a lot of cost goes into mounting these shows, and people are encouraged to be as generous as they can be.
Right. Alan, I want to thank you for coming on. Again, if people want to go to the website, they can go to www. Let's go over your website again. It's takeawalk.com. Okay, good. Alan, thank you. Great job. And
thank you so much.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Thank you.